Welcome back to the Wine and Dime Pod, the podcast where we drink wine and talk hoops. I'm Chris and that's Lyndsay, and today we're cracking open a bottle of Campo Viejo. That's a Rioja from Spain. We actually have slightly different bottles. Mine is ecologico. There's some messages here about saving the environment. I got the organic one. She got the regular.
Once
And
again, once again, the LCBO strikes again in making life difficult for us. But that's okay. I think they're about the same. They're both Tempranillo, which is the
yep.
main grape in Rioja, so close enough. Yeah,
Any
I
thoughts
guess
on it so far?
I haven't actually tried it yet. So first impressions. That smells like a Tempranillo for sure. It's yeah, it's a Tempranillo. I haven't had too many of them, but I think this is like one of the most popular, just like Tempranillos on the market. You can kind of find it everywhere. It's pretty standard, but it's definitely a younger wine. I don't think that this one's particularly like aged, which is fine. Tempranillo can be drank both ways.
And
Um,
I'm on the 2022.
yeah, I'm on the
Yep.
2020. I have a 2021 vintage, so mine's slightly older.
Yeah,
Regardless,
mine is
they
definitely tastes like a
fresh.
young wine. It's a
Yeah,
little also a little earthier than I think. I thought it was gonna be a little drier, which was a little bit surprising.
Tempranillo's a pretty like it can be a pretty like tannic grape.
Hmm.
Um, it's definitely not an incredibly acidic grape, but it definitely makes like pretty dry wine traditionally. But it can. So like I would say that this is on the simpler and like fruitier sort of end of things for a Tempranillo. You can get a lot more like big bold tannin from it as well, which is possible. But it's a super versatile grape. It's kind of the most like common Spanish grape I think that most people have had, especially a red, because it's grown kind of everywhere.
Mm.
It's really traditional in most parts of Spain, but Rioja is the main region that it comes from. And yeah, usually it's aged in like small casks, which means that you're going to get a lot more like oak flavor in a Tempranillo, even a young wine like this where it's not aged for very long. They don't specify on it how long it's aged for, which there's different things. Like if you're reading a Spanish wine label and it says like joven on it, it means young. Crianza means it's oak aged, but for like only a certain amount of time. Reserva is aged in oak and then in bottle, and then a Grand Reserva is like the highest minimum oak age standards. This one doesn't really
I always forget that
specify
Canadians aren't
joven.
it's one of
Yeah,
those times where they're just like us, but not quite. They're not as familiar with the
Spanish language.
Spanish
No, I
yeah.
also refuse to be one of those really like I hate it sometimes when people go too hard on the pronunciation of something, especially
Yeah.
in a wine, when it's like you don't speak that language and have no background in that language, so like I don't feel super comfortable. Like, yeah. I like German wines, I feel a little more comfortable fucking with like
Mm.
the terms, but it's a little harder for me in Spanish. Italian I've got a bit more. Yeah. This doesn't specify, but it is um definitely a younger wine. I don't think it's been aged for very long, probably like a year. Just enough to give it some of that like toastiness and kind of mellow out a little bit of the tannin. But it's definitely pretty
Yeah.
like fresh and fruity. It's got like really strong red fruit, definitely earthier. You're right.
Mine's a little
I don't
acidic, I
know.
feel like, a little bit.
It is. Tempranillo definitely has some like acidity. It's definitely like in the middle there. It's not like incredibly acidic. It's not like a Sangiovese where you're gonna get a ton of acidity, but it's certainly got more than some. Definitely not super tannic either. Like there's a little bit there, but you can't. It's not drying out your mouth too much. But the earthiness is definitely some like I don't know. Personally, I get some cocoa, and then I also get like cedar, like wood. You can kind of taste a little bit of that oakiness, a little bit of the wood.
I know my palate's not as refined. Like I could definitely pick up on wood. I could not tell you which tree, man. I'm not that advanced.
I literally just made soap with cedar oil, so I'm very. I have that smell and that kind of like that in my brain a little bit at the moment.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, honestly. Again, it's definitely on the like more affordable side of wines, so definitely you're
Mm.
just your more accessible, easy drinker. It's nothing too fancy, but it's pretty good. Again, the biggest challenge we have picking wine, for those who are somewhat unaware, is Chris living in Ontario makes things a little bit interesting because our markets, Canada does not have, I don't know, everywhere is different, and Alberta, where I live, is one of the only provinces with an entirely privatized market, so there's a lot more selection in many cases here because you don't have just one government buyer buying everything. So it's definitely different. It makes it a little challenging sometimes because there's been a whole bunch of wines that I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And then Ontario's like, actually, no, we don't buy that. So,
There's a lot more
yeah.
Georgian wine options than I expected. Not that many Spanish at the store that I was at. So if
Yeah,
whoever Daze ever has a big game where he drops, a 30-point
yeah.
triple double, I know where to go.
Orlando is, yeah, we're expecting big things out of DOCa if we're going to drink. But yeah, we went to, decided with a Spanish wine, so obviously y'all are not going to see a lot of American wine on this podcast going forward because we live in Canada and you can't buy it in Ontario and anymore, which is fine, to be honest. I'd rather drink European wine in most cases anyways. We also really
The,
can't
the
do
sad thing
Canadian.
though is it's not really been the American wine sections haven't really been replaced by like European wines. It's been like a
No,
big like Ontario VQA
I
section. I'm
know.
like, there's some hits in there, but there's some that
Yeah.
ain't really it.
The
Like,
other
if I'm
big
being honest.
challenge is that we can't drink the same Canadian wines because we don't really sell Ontario wine west of Winnipeg, and BC wine doesn't really sell east of
I
that.
don't I
So
don't want to imagine Winnipeg wine to be honest. I don't
actually,
disrespect, but
well, there is no wine. It's just they sell like Niagara VQA really only goes as far as like Manitoba, as far west,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
for the most part nobody's buying it out here. And I would argue too that like BC just generally produces better wines than Niagara. And even Ontario's trying to poach BC wine right now, and it's not going very well because there really is no BC wine to distribute. But
Mm,
even Ontario wants BC VQA right now. I do hope that we'll see more from, like, I think the European importers and like Australia, um, South Africa, South America, they have like the best opportunity with all this tariff stuff going on, because the biggest markets like Ontario is one of the largest liquor buyers like in North America. So
mm.
like Ontario, I think like for Kentucky bourbon alone, like Ontario is the biggest market, not just Canada,
Better.
but like Ontario. And so it's becoming a big issue. It'll be a big issue for a lot of American like wine and spirits companies that like they can't export to Canada anymore because
Yeah.
we're their largest people. Like no one outside of Canada is drinking California wine. I'm not gonna lie. No one in Europe, no one in Australia. Like they got better shit at home, so they're not importing that.
Yeah.
So it's been very
But it's
interesting
also
in
hella
the wine
far.
world. Well, it's not even that's not even the problem, to be honest, because I mean like we drink tons of like New Zealand and Australian wine. It's just that the culture of drinking American wine only exists in North America.
Mm,
Like people in Europe especially too, because like American wineries heavily oak everything, and so
mm.
in most cases it's starting to change, but largely traditionally that's been the case. And American oak is a very like different flavor than say French oak or Eastern European oak, which the Italians use a lot. And so I know a lot of people just the taste of American wine just isn't necessarily like a flavor people want in
No.
Europe. And also they have really rich winemaking traditions, so why would they?
Yeah, a
Um,
lot of national pride too. Like, if you
yeah,
ever been in Italy, like I lived in Italy as a kid, and one thing that we always talked about was how there weren't non-Italian restaurants in our
no,
town. There
not
were
really.
two, I think, in our area,
Yeah,
that didn't serve Italian food, and one was like a Chinese restaurant, and one was somehow a Mexican restaurant. Every other restaurant in our immediate area was Italian. Like we didn't even have McDonald's in our town. Like we didn't even have fast food from other
yeah.
places. Like it was just Italian food. Like, and I imagine their wine consumption is more or less of the same spirit. Like we are drinking Italian wine. We might fuck with French, but we're drinking Italian.
I was gonna say like the only other wine you might see around a bit more is some French wine, maybe
Yeah,
some Spanish, but mostly French. And honestly, most of the French wine that's consumed in Italy is champagne.
yeah.
It's not even the reds, because I mean, Bordeaux's are good, but Brunellos are better. So
We got red at home. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
we
we're
got
good.
red
We're
at
good.
home. That's literally it,
Yeah,
and that's how I think most countries feel about wine consumption. Where it's like we got
yeah,
that at home. Like we don't need
yeah,
Napa Valley Cab when we have Super Tuscans,
yeah,
or Bordeaux's or whatever. And I mean, from a Pinot Noir perspective, Burgundy and Pinot Noir is better anyway, so that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
The region that I think really blows, like it sucks, is just like Oregon, because Willamette Pinot is amazing. That's kind of a
So
bummer.
expensive though. Like if you're in
It is
France,
so
you'd probably
expensive.
rather pay 15 euro for a nice Pinot out there than pay like
Yeah,
40 euros for something from Oregon.
Burgundy, and well, that's the thing. It's still not going to be an export. I just mean for me as a Canadian wine drinker,
Oh
like I
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
Oregon Pinot. I don't. The French are not going to drink it no matter what. So whatever. They all moved to Oregon to produce the wine, but they're not going to import it. Yeah, it's been. I don't know. It's working in the industry has been very interesting the last month and a half. It's been very complicated, and
Yeah.
Alberta did things a bit differently where we were not straight up. Like, I think the problem was no one knew it was going to happen here. We just assumed that we'd continue selling it. It would just be tariffed and whatever, and it would just be consumers making that choice to
Yeah.
not pay the extra money. But then Danielle Smith surprised all of us and banned the import of American wine into the centralized warehouse. And at first, we couldn't even sell what we had in stock out of the warehouse to people, but now they released that because they realized it was costing too much money in storage fees for all of
Yeah.
us to just sit on our product. And so they're allowing us to sell through what's in the warehouse, but I mean, still, it, the consumer has moved away from American wine. I do legitimately think American wine is going to take a very long time to recover in Canada in terms of just like perception. It has nothing to do with the wineries. It's not any of their fault. No one wanted this. Agents didn't
Yeah.
want this. Like, you know, people like myself who have to sell American wine, like I didn't want this. I would rather still be selling American wine, things like that. No one wanted this, and we're all kind of just being punished for a Cheeto dusted loser being in office. And yeah, it's unfortunate. It's kind of, and I think it's unfortunately also ruined the perception of American wine and American products. I think bourbon is an exception because there's really not a lot of good replacements, but you can easily replace California wine, and most people have. And so I think it's going to take like at least probably like, even if we could start selling American wine, like everything was totally normal, all of this just ended and we could start, you know, it was just completely normal, it would still probably take like 10 years for the reputation of American wine to come back, because it's going to take people a long time to be like, yeah, okay, I feel comfortable supporting this. And it kind of sucks. Like, it's going to be like what happened to French wine when there was a big boycott on French products for a long time. It took a really long time for French wine to recover in Canada, and I think that it's going to be the same for American products. Like wine
Maybe,
specifically. Whiskeys are different.
yeah.
Bourbon is like a
Yeah.
very separate thing because
Yeah.
that's the one that's been hitting people the hardest. There just aren't very many good replacements for bourbon. Like
Mm.
rye, you can easily find great Canadian rye. You can find really good other whiskeys. It's just bourbon specifically that's kind of harder
Yeah.
to replace. So
I feel like
this
there's
should be
some regions
interesting.
that might recover more easily than others. Like I feel like the California wines might have an easier time recovering than like the stuff from the Pacific Northwest, because I feel like the BC stuff would be such an easy analog compared to like Washington and Oregon wines, that it would probably be, that's such an easy replacement as opposed to like, if you're like a big like, I need a dry ass Cabernet person. Like I feel like the California stuff is probably going to hit different
But
than
you
most
could
of the Canadian
but you
wines.
could pretty easily replace that. Like that's the
With
thing though, is
actual
that,
French Cabernet, yeah, of
or
course,
even
yeah,
like Chilean, like South American wine. I found lots of South American cabs that honestly
yeah,
are not that different, even
yeah,
Australian, right? So that's the thing, is it's like on one hand you could see it being easier because California is also a blue state, so it's people are a
yeah,
little more willing to be forgiving there. Kentucky's in a weird spot because even though they're historically a pretty blue state and they've moved back around that way, everyone still sees them very much as like very red and Republican, which is, you know,
mm.
whatever. They did move that way for a while,
Yeah.
so it's fair.
McConnell doesn't help with that perception, I
He
don't
does
think.
not. He absolutely does not. um, yeah, it's still just like tough because I think there's easier replacements for California cab, like a Super
Yeah,
Tuscan, Bordeaux, anything from, yeah, like Chilean and Argentinian cab, even Malbec, right? Similar, close enough. You can kind of make it work. And people are willing to. It's made wine drinkers. So interestingly enough, Alberta has one of the least exploratory wine markets in Canada. So people here drink
mm.
what they drink. They know what they like. They buy that.
Yeah,
It's hard for them to like move on to other things. The products people move to, it's because we have to do an incredible amount of work just literally tasting people on it, like the liquor store
mm.
tastings, that kind of stuff, because people won't buy it if they've never tried it.
Yeah,
But we're seeing a lot more people starting to explore now and finding out what they like because they're forced to. But the other
mm.
interesting thing to your point about BC wine is that you could easily go to the Pacific Northwest. The problem is that there is no BC wine because of 2 years of massive fires and smoke taint, and then last year there was a freeze in the spring that really destroyed like huge crops of vines. And so what's happening is we're actually having to import American grapes to produce BC wines because we don't have any grapes in lots of cases. And so it's getting really complicated because obviously it's not BCVQA. It's creating a whole lot of really interesting conversations within the
Yeah,
industry, but it's also the only way to keep a lot of these brands alive because it takes at least 4 to 5 years before vines produce grapes. So at the end of the day, for a lot of small producers, it's really tough out there right now because if you can't afford to replant and sit and wait, then you're kind of screwed. So there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking in the BC industry, which is disappointing, but I think it'll be fine in the end. It's just going to take some time. But you're right. The Pacific Northwest is a very close approximation. So we are obviously, a lot of companies are pulling grapes from other countries as well, not just the US, but for BC specifically, it's really hard because Washington and Oregon are the most similar climates, and so they're the closest you're ever going to get. That's also partially why Ontario wine doesn't really sell out here. It's so different. And if we're used to drinking BC wine, switching to like the Niagara version of it is so different. It's almost like drinking a different country because the climate's so different and everything like that. So I don't know. It's been an interesting time to work in this industry. It's like one of the most it's one of the least politicized industries, generally speaking. Like the economy and politics affects us in terms of people's like the amount of money people have to spend, but we rarely have to actually talk about like the machinations of like politics in our industry, and it's very strange having to do that so much now, because it's like all we've been able to talk about for a month and a half. I haven't actually been able to talk about like wine. So it's been a little bit exhausting.
Man. That's a shame.
It kind of has, but it's okay. I think we're moving forward. I've got some fun. I had like a really fun time at an event on Friday getting to pour for people, and people are really starting to spread the joy of European wine, in particular Vino and Italian wine. So I'm happy today to be spreading some love to some Spanish wine, because I don't know, I feel like more people should drink old world wine. It's
good shit.
North Americans in general just don't drink old world wine, and I feel like we should.
I'm ready for Australia to have a moment too. It sure has season. The time is upon
Yeah.
us.
I think Australia is starting to be on the come up again, because they kind of ruined themselves there for a while by mostly exporting a lot of terrible bulk wine, and now and also just the style of winemaking it's kind of like how California Chardonnay has always been very like heavily oaky and just like tastes like a butterball, and now it's starting to go back to a different like a lighter oaked style. Like it's changing because of people's tastes. I think the same's happening with Australian Shiraz, kind of like we talked about last week. Instead of being those incredibly overripe, jammy, like over oaked wines, they're starting to make like younger, fresher Shiraz, and starting to highlight kind of the different versatility of that grape and also what they can do with their climate in Australia. So I'm with you. It's going to be fun to see that change happening. New Zealand is definitely going to explode as well. Like New Zealand wines are Sauvignon Blanc in particular. White wine is becoming very popular again. It's like a new trend. It's actually overtaking red in terms of popularity, which is pretty crazy because red wine has always been king. So countries like
people just won't drink red at all. Like they're
countries like New Zealand are primed to really take over and really benefit from this white wine boom, because they produce some of the best like Sauvignon Blancs and stuff like that in the world, really. Even Chardonnay, actually, like cool climate Chardonnay, kind of like your Chablis of the world. That sort of style, unoaked Chardonnay, does really well. So, anyways, back to this particular wine. It's pretty good, though. I don't know. I'm into it. Rioja's tasty. We decided to go with the Spanish wine because the NBA is actually trying to really get behind a league in Europe, and Spain will obviously be a pretty big part of that. They've got some big clubs. Spain's very much a basketball country, Spain and France, so it was also a good excuse to drink Spanish wine as a result.
Don't need a big excuse for that, but you know, I'll
that's pretty much like the reasoning for this choice. I don't know. Sometimes we have really in-depth explanations for why we choose a wine. Other times, we just kind of want to drink that wine, and we'll find a way to make it fit the theme of the episode.
Yeah, I was there specifically because the ACB is known to be the second best domestic league in the world after the NBA. I know France has been like the big producer of talent lately. We've seen multiple number one picks coming from France, but at the end of the day, man, Spain for decades now has been a basketball powerhouse in Europe and globally. So you gotta pay some respect, you know. So if a new European venture opens up, some of the biggest teams are gonna be undoubtedly are gonna be Spanish, and even the outside of actual Spain producing its own incredible talents, so many players come from other countries and go to Spain
To
to
play.
mature as basketball players and become
Yeah.
good. Whether it's guys like Serge Ibaka, who wound up actually playing for the Spanish national team,
Mm-hmm.
or Luka Doncic is the most recent and most obvious example. Someone who came from Slovenia to Spain as a young kid and became one of the best basketball players on the planet by playing in a tough league with grown-ass men that draws talent from not only all over Europe, but from Africa and from North America. There's a lot of former D1 basketball stars who are making it happen out in Spain. So it's a great league, and that'll be at the forefront of anything he does in Europe for sure, along with France.
And you can see that too on the women's side, because like the Spanish clubs are always some of the best. Spain and Turkey are, and well, I mean, it used to be a lot of the Eastern European clubs too, but obviously that's changed a little bit with the situation in Russia, but and Ukraine. They used to have some very good clubs that obviously aren't really playing at the moment for fairly obvious reasons. But yeah, I agree. Spain's always been one of those national teams that's always been greater than the sum of its parts, because even if they don't have the greatest like Like you look at the names on the court and you're like, okay, like they're all pretty talented. They're maybe not. They're NBA caliber at least. Maybe not stars or like the best players in the NBA, but they could play. And then you see them as a team, and it's like Spain's always a good national team. It doesn't matter whether or not they've got like a old ass Gasol brother playing for them and like old Ricky Rubio, or if they've got younger up and coming players. Yeah, they're not Gomez. Yeah, I mean like Juancho is like a notorious FIBA player where it's like as soon as he plays for Spain, he can't fucking miss. But then he comes to play in the NBA, and it's like all of a sudden his shooting disappears. Yeah. Ricky Rubio, another famous example. Although I really think the injury to Rubio really kind of like fucked him up in the NBA because I think
the Manny, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that first really big ACL tear in Minnesota kind of ruined everything going forward, which is too bad because I really like Ricky Rubio. He was a lot of fun.
At '08 Olympics, he showed up looking like the fifth member of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Had the teenage girls like crushing on him in the crowd and shit. That was awesome. Throwing wrap around, no look behind the back passes. It was cool, man. He was playing against the Redeem team was a good ass team too, and he looked like he belonged out there. Like that
He
was
did.
incredibly
Well,
impressive.
even when he got to the NBA, you could tell like he belonged. It's like I just think that his potential, he never quite lived up to it, and I think a big part of that was the injuries. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
it wasn't just the style of play being different. I really think the injuries hurt that.
Yeah, his aesthetic changing over time is one of the most fun NBA things of the last however many years. He came out looking like a boy band member. He left looking like I don't know what, like a
He
bartender at like
looked.
a hipster bar. You know what I
I
mean?
was gonna say he looked like he lived. He looked like a California surfer. Like
Yeah,
kind of had that like that granola bar kind of like California hippy dippy surfer vibe a little bit,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't know, it fit him,
yeah.
really fit him. But we actually came here to talk about some other things a little bit, not so much Spain or Ricky Rubio. But do you have any quick thoughts on the NBA trying to evolve into Europe? Like I don't know too much of the detail. I haven't looked incredibly into it, but I've got some just on the face of it thoughts about it a little bit.
Can't imagine too many of the big like EuroLeague caliber teams would be thrilled at the idea of being absorbed into some NBA run entity, especially since a lot of these teams look at like Real Madrid or like Barcelona, like the basketball teams are tied in to
The
the
football
football clubs,
clubs.
which have been around for well over 100 years. And I think the idea of now being under the NBA umbrella and potentially being under an NBA type structure isn't really appeal to them, especially since they exist in a salary cap free environment, very, very open market. The long-standing joke is that, Americans love unchecked capitalism and they hate socialism or whatever, but in sports they love socialism. But then in Europe, they love, they're a little bit more socialist economically, but then their sports are super, super, super ultra capitalist. And I think that like clash of structures could be really interesting though if they try to merge with long-standing EuroLeague clubs.
I don't think, yeah, I feel a little unsure of who's going to be interested. It feels a bit kind of like that. I don't watch like European football that much, just it's not really my thing, mostly because it's just hard
Mm,
to follow living in North America.
mm,
But it's giving me kind of like that super league that was trying to be created where like the top clubs from all over Europe were trying to create their
yep,
own league to make the most money. It felt a little bit like that, and it feels a little like that where the NBA is trying to be like, hey,
yep.
come, you know, who needs to play against these tiny little European clubs when you can play against the best, only the best? And that's kind of what it feels like. But it also, I don't know, I think you're right, where I don't know that those big clubs are necessarily going to be interested when it comes to the basketball side. I think because, to your point, they're tied into the larger like ecosystem of European sports in general. Like all of these clubs, like even Fener
Mm,
in Turkey, like has existed. It's more than just the basketball team. The basketball team's
yep.
probably the most profitable arm of that particular like club, but I know that they have a football team and they have other sports. So I don't know. It makes that more complicated, but I also think there's a lot of just resistance from EuroLeague in general because the EuroLeague's existed for so long, and like the FIBA structure has existed and been popular in Europe, and the NBA has always been kind of resented by the people who run EuroLeague and FIBA to some extent because the rules are different. And I think there's also just an element of like American exceptionalism in basketball where it's like we know America's the best, but like we don't need to be reminded all the goddamn time, and we also don't
Or
need to
different
play
to
in
their
the
talent pool too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I think that there's a bit of a like, well, is the end just because like I don't know, I kind of can feel this a little bit where I see it from fans where it's just like you view a player who goes to excuse me, goes to Europe to play, and you think of them as a lesser player because they didn't make it to the NBA. But it's like the level of talent and play in EuroLeague isn't. It's not Bush League. It's not like it's some just like it's not the G League. It's a lot better than the G League, right? Like it's not something like that. But I think American fans have this tendency to view those leagues as being almost the same thing as like a G League or like a developmental league. And this kind of gambit feels a bit like the NBA also feeling that way, where it's like EuroLeague is just kind of like another developmental league, so it's not really that great. We'll start our own thing. And yeah, right. It is also like it's an unabashed grab at trying to get more talent out of EuroLeague. But it's like if you also just treated European players better, they'd probably be more willing to come over anyway. Like that's
Honestly,
that's kind of the problem.
The bottom 50 NBA players and swapped them with the top 50 EuroLeague players, it's probably a better NBA. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Especially since, a lot of those bottom guys are going to be like young dudes who maybe get like 5 minutes a game. You're getting like grown ass men with pro experience and have played in high pressure environments and stuff like that. Like some of these guys go to EuroLeague and they become significantly better than they ever were in college or as youth players. They got some real hoopers out there, man. They got some real
well, and
hoopers.
I also think too, people view EuroLeague as like they don't see it as being like as important as the NBA is to America. Like, but you've seen players like Niko Mirotic was a good example where he's like, I'm gonna go overseas, and even Marc Gasol at the end of his career. But Mirotic, he's like, well, I can make more money playing in Barcelona, and maybe it's not quite the same level of competitiveness that the NBA is, but I can make more money. I get to live in Spain, and I'm still gonna have plenty of fans because everybody still watches and cheers for the team. So it's not like you have no fans. It's not like there's 5 people in these cold ass gyms. Like these are very well funded operations, and they still pay. Too. Right, they still pay tons of money. Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing is when like NBA fans are like, oh, like I bet Luka or Jokic or whoever these players have never played an environment like this, and then you go watch a clip of a basketball game in Serbia, and you're like, no, you're right. They've never played. They've never. You're like you've never. You're right. They've never played in an environment like this. They've played in much worse. Like this is probably the dullest playoff environment they've ever played in. Like, let's be real. Yeah, there are no fireworks going off in the stands.
Clap. Like
there's no fireworks. There's no fighting. They don't have to have designated like opposing fan sections because everyone's just gonna fight each other. That's not a thing in the NBA. Like European fans are a lot more intense, and it's a lot more like partisan, I guess, in that sense. And like speaking of partisan, like watching
industries and shit from like 100 years ago. Like the one club was started by like steel workers from this part of town. The other club was started by whatever from the other part of town. They fucking hated each other for 150 years. Yeah, it gets intense, man.
Or like in Serbia, you have like Partizan and Red Star. Their players literally fought each other in a real war in the 90s. Like, and their fans too. Like, they all literally fought in a war against each other. So it's like there's some animosity. Like if anybody watched the clip of when DOCa, Dejan Milivojevic, the coach who died, the Serbian coach who passed away, when he was honored in Serbia at the Partizan Red Star game. Like just watching even the clip of his tribute was like that environment was more intense than like your average 1 versus 8 seed playoff game. Like, and that was ultimately a regular season game, but they were honoring obviously like a legend. But still, I mean, the fact that you had 2 clubs who hate each other come together and like there was that much energy and just intensity, like I don't know. It's a bit different, and I don't know. I'm just really curious to see. It just feels like a bit of a money grab by the NBA. It feels a little bit kind of like, I don't know, a little paternalistic. It's almost like telling Europe, like, your basketball is not good enough. We can be better. We can do it better. Even though, yeah, like you said, these clubs have existed for a very long time. And, like, obviously the NBA does influence a lot of things. I mean, basketball very much got more popular in lots of places, especially because of the Barcelona Olympics and things like that. So I get it, right? Like, I understand the globalization of the game, and a lot of it still starts with America, but I think it's really kind of shitty of the NBA to come over and be like, yeah, your basketball culture is not cool enough, like, you should be more like us. And it's like, you don't have a monopoly on this. Just because you're the league that technically probably makes the most money and does have the best talent in the world doesn't necessarily mean you're that much, like, you are better, I guess, in that kind of, like, sense, if that makes, I don't know. It just bothers me. I think I don't like things like that happening, because it's like you're just devaluing a whole ass like thing that's existed for a very long time. It just feels a little kind of like, young whippersnapper coming in telling people how to run their shit. It's like,
Yeah,
No.
it feels very we're very, very rich. We notice them having a lot of fun and making some money over there. How do we get how do we get that money? How do we get those eyeballs? How do we turn those EuroLeague eyeballs into NBA eyeballs? And it just feels very like yeah, it feels very goofy. Instead of like being doing a better job promoting the NBA over there, it's okay, what if we just turn those teams into NBA adjacent teams and then we can have that revenue stream? It just feels very unnecessary. Like I don't know what these European teams gain from it. Like even if they decide to pump money into it, I don't really know what they're doing that would significantly change the conditions for the players out there.
Neither. Or the quality of the basketball. And would they be playing NBA rules or still FIBA rules? And then would those clubs still get to compete in things like Eurobasket or any of that? Because the thing is like Eurobasket and those kinds of competitions are really important to the players themselves because that's how you qualify for the Olympics and other things. So it's like, how would that league work around that kind of stuff? Do you still get to compete in, I don't know, tournaments? Like, it's just confusing. The structure is already so different. It doesn't really
Yeah.
make sense. But yeah, it does feel a bit like a cash grab, and like Europe's the only place where the NBA is not super involved comparatively because obviously they're funding the league, the BAL in Africa, and they've got I think some pretty heavy. They have heavy investments in China. I don't know whether they're involved in like the Chinese league or if they're just it's more around like the infrastructure and the NBA academy.
Mm.
But regardless, like they're heavily invested in pretty much every other main basketball market in the world except Europe. It's like Europe has been the
Yeah.
one place they haven't been able to kind of take over, and it feels like they're just turning their attention there and trying come hell or high water, even though I
Yeah.
don't really understand the utility of it entirely.
Basketball colonization.
It's honestly that's what it is. I was gonna say that
Trying to be the
earlier.
British Empire of a sport, basically.
Yeah, yeah. The sun never sets on the NBA.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, and I think the thing, but I do think the NBA has to be careful because I think what they, to your point about how a lot of these clubs are fan owned, and I think that's what the billionaires like the Cronkies who own Liverpool,
They own Arsenal,
Arsenal,
which
sorry, Arsenal.
it's
But
something that has caused me great pain in my life. But
yeah, but so the Cronkies owning Arsenal and like that kind of a lot of American billionaires being involved in some of these Premiership teams.
yeah,
I think what they forgot, and this is what they started to see with when they tried to form this Super League. What they noticed was like fans being as invested as they are because they literally have ownership stake, or that's how these clubs founded was because of their
mm,
fans putting money in. People are more passionate about what happens to their clubs, and so like see those protests, like seeing Chelsea fans and like all these like big clubs that you think of them as these big capitalistic machines, which they are, but then you see their fans be like, you don't get to do this. Like we started this, and you don't have shit without us.
yeah,
And so it's one of those things where I think basketball would be similar, and I think the NBA has to be very careful how they approach this because they could actually just risk alienating a whole lot of people and actually doing more damage than good in terms of like you need fans to make money. That's where the money comes from is people watching and paying and investing. And so if they're not invested because they hate you, they're not gonna. It's not gonna help you. You're not doing anything positive for you.
yeah.
So that's I don't know. We'll see what happens with it, but I don't have great hope.
Yeah, one of the things that was wild about the European Super League thing in football was people were like, "Oh, well, we're gonna take all the big clubs away, and then hey, all you little clubs that never win the championship, now you can win the championship." And they were like, "No, it doesn't mean anything if we win it without the biggest club in the country here." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that shit's not important to us anymore. We don't want to win the junior league. We don't want to win the fucking kids table
right. Because
of soccer. Like, you know what I mean?
you've
Like we want to win
you
the
you've
whole shit.
immediately taken all of the value of the Premiership or Bundesliga or whatever.
Yeah,
You've immediately taken all of the value of winning that out.
yeah,
Like you think of like so like Ted Lasso, right? Like I think it's most Americans now kind of vague understanding of how the Premiership works,
yeah,
and even me to some extent. But I think I like sometimes I got to think about it through that lens a little, just because it makes it easier to digest. Where it's like, it's true though. Like, why would you be fighting to be in the Premiership at all if it doesn't mean you're competing against the Chelseas, the Man Uniteds, those like
right.
massive historical clubs, right? It's dumb. So I'm a little bit skeptical. And it seems so far like most NBA media is pretty skeptical. And they're skeptical
Yeah.
because they understand that like European basketball is its whole other thing. And it's like
Hmm.
very important to these countries. I think it's the NBA underestimating how much this shit matters to some of these places.
They
How
used to
much
just
it
walk into
matters.
places that don't have as much basketball infrastructure and just be like, "Hey, we're gonna plant our flag here," like they did in like NBA Africa and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, these European leagues have been popping for
Long
a
time.
while, man.
Long time. Yeah. Agreed. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand on it. We'll see what happens with it. But the EuroLeague season for the women's been pretty fun though. Emma Miesemann, MVP. Love to see it.
It's open.
Yeah,
Open.
she's. We'll see if she comes back to the W. Um, we'll see. Curious to see what happens with the W this year. There's a lot of talent coming in. We're recording this
Draft is
on.
tomorrow night. It'll
Yeah,
this will post the day after the draft,
yeah,
but it is coming up. We did not coordinate wearing our team's merch today. This is actually a coincidence. I
yeah.
just happened to put a Mercury shirt on. She happened to put a Chicago Sky shirt on. So,
My Sloot jersey. It's back to being relevant because she is back on the team.
hey, there you go. There you go.
I'm happy to have my girl back. Missed her. But yeah. So yeah, the draft we should have probably timed this better news wise, but whatever. It is what it is. So the draft is we're recording this Sunday, so the draft is Monday night. This will release
Yep.
Tuesday, so by the time you listen to this, the draft will have already happened. But my team sold off the third pick for Ariel Atkins, so we're not even picking in the lottery anymore, really.
Was it a
Uh,
surprising decision?
it was, but I don't know, I've come to understand it a little bit better now. Um, we're picking at 10th, so yeah, okay. We're still in the lottery, but
Worse.
not.
Still
I
in the
don't know.
first round.
Still in the first round. I'm not sure how I feel about giving up the third pick for Ariel Atkins, but at the same time, I'm starting to understand the justification like a little bit. When you have young posts, you want to have veteran guards. And she also provides a scoring punch as a guard that we do not have on the roster. At all, actually, because I don't. Dana Evans is now a member of the Las Vegas Aces, which does make me very happy as a Dana fan, as a resident Louisville fan and Dana stan. Happy she's on a team that I think will actually use her well. But it was actually my hope that she would go to the Aces if she couldn't stay in Chicago. But we just don't have that like dynamic guard, and I think having a Ariel Atkins, I think people forgot, and I'm guilty of this too because Washington's been shitty for the last couple of years. I kind of forgot how good she was and how much of she's a great shooter, and she's a very like she can get a bucket, she can get her own. She doesn't need to be set up. Just kind of adds that like a bit of that dimension that Kennedy Carter added to the team last year, where you can kind of just give her the ball and she'll go get you a bucket. But she's a lot more of a stable personality for the team, and just
The
more of a
still unsigned Kennedy Carter, surprisingly.
yeah. I think it's honestly I feel for her in the sense that I think she's way too talented to not be in the league, but I also think there's something going on there, and I don't think it's all other teams anymore. Like it was
Yeah.
easy when it was the Dream, or even like Kurt Miller in Los Angeles, where you're like, okay, like maybe just didn't work out there, whatever. Kurt can be, he's a veteran coach. Maybe he wants to play a certain way. But I mean, and obviously, I think Teaspoon unlocked her a little bit in Chicago.
Mm.
But I think that there's more to that story though. Like something happened with Teaspoon, Kennedy Carter, and some other players on that team because there's no way that all of them should I still feel weird about the Teaspoon firing, and I feel like something happened. And the Kennedy Carter situation feels like it might be related a little bit because there was definitely some tension in that locker room. There's no way there wasn't, because they didn't bring her back, and she was our best scorer basically last year. So outside of like Angel, so I don't really know what's going on, but it seems like there's something about her particular personality as a player that just isn't what Chicago wants as the culture. And it seems like no other team really wants to touch that, which is interesting because she's a very talented player, so you'd think someone would take a risk. But there's obviously something that's happened that there's just maybe even too many stops like that now because she's been on, 3, 4 different teams, and it's all kind of ended the same way. So I hate to always, I don't know, I'm always skeptical to buy into discussions about like locker room cancers, things like that, because I do find a lot of the time the language is very coded, and it's very, honestly, a lot of times it's pretty racist, is
Yeah.
what it's like coded towards and things like that, and I never want to always pin it on players because there's always lots of things about ecosystem that can cause that. But I do think once you've cycled through this many teams and had the same result despite playing very well, there's something that's not working for both
You would
parties, or
think, yeah.
just maybe you are part of the problem a little bit, right? So I'm not sure. But she's played super well in China. She had a really good offseason again.
Yeah.
She's a hooper, but yeah, I don't really know where she goes from here. Maybe a couple years out of the league, to be honest. I could see her having to play overseas and kind of earn back a bit of that trust from, especially when there's so much young guard talent coming into the league, is the other thing. Speaking of the draft,
Speaking of young guard talent coming to the league, I pulled up two different mock drafts, and they have both of them have Chicago taking Tahina Pau in the
oh, interesting because the
with their
other mock,
number 10 pick.
see the mock draft I have pulled up has them taking Georgia Amore,
Okay, not a bad pick. Last time I
which
saw her, she was being defeated by no particular university. It could be anybody, Could you know
could have been anyone. Yeah.
could be anyone.
Um, I think I would be very happy if we got Georgia Amore. I would also be very happy with Tahina Pau Pau. I would prefer Amore over Pau Pau. I think 10
Hmm.
is, to be honest, a little rich for Pau Pau. In particular because, and maybe it's just the system she was playing in South Carolina a little bit, just like having to balance the talent because they're very much more of a post-dominant team
Hmm.
because that's where their best players typically have been. I feel like her game needs to evolve a little bit outside of just being a really deadly outside shooter. She's a very good defender. And we do need the shooting at the end of the day. We don't need her to be a super dynamic guard, but I think I'd rather have a bit more dynamism around Camilla and um, Angel. The other thing is that Georgia Amore is a bit more of a traditional point guard, so just in terms of
Yeah.
like those basic things like getting the ball to your posts, I kind of trust that a little bit more. But
That's some juice to her game too, some creativity, which you like to see. I think
yeah,
it was the first time really watching her play was in that game against K-State. And hey man, she was giving us trouble. Like I'm not gonna lie, she was giving us trouble.
yeah, she's,
Fortunately lost in the end, but
to be
there's a
fair, she
ball
was
player
kind
right there.
of the main character in Kentucky. She was like the best player, but when she
Yeah.
was in, I watched her last year in that Final Four run with Virginia Tech, and she was very good. Having Liz Kitley as well, like when she had like a post that she could kind of team up with who was really talented. They were a very good team. Her relationship with Kenny Brooks is kind of weird. I don't know. It's very strange, but not saying there's nothing happening there. It's just very like, when you see those like coach player relationships where like the player then follows the coach when they leave and like all that stuff. It's always just
Mm.
kind of interesting. But they were really close, and I think she's an extremely talented player. So I think personally, for my money, I would rather have a player like Georgia Amore or even Haley Van Lith over Pau Pau at
Mm.
10, just for the pick value. But I would obviously be very happy to have Pau Pau on the roster, and I think anytime you draft a South Carolina player, like you're probably pretty safe. Don Staley does a good job of preparing her players for the pros, and I mean, Pau Pau has chemistry with Camilla already because they played together, so that would be fine. I would, again, I'm not trying to say I'd be very unhappy if we drafted Pau Pau. I just feel like 10 maybe is a little rich. I don't know. There's just a million guards in that spot that you could probably go for.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. Everyone obviously has Paige coming first, which not surprising. Olivia Miles pulling out of the draft and deciding to enter the transfer portal and go to TCU of all places was a very interesting decision. But
TCU pulled two of the top 10 players in the transfer portal. Like they are throwing money around. Apparently, I didn't know
it
TCU
must
was such
be,
a destination for basketball, but I guess they are that now.
I guess. Something I read that was really interesting about the Olivia Miles situation. Obviously, there's some rumblings about the stuff with Hannah Hidalgo, and obviously like her homophobic comments earlier in the year and how that might have
Mhm.
helped to kind of bring down the Notre Dame locker room low-key a little bit because everybody transferred basically except for like two players. Everyone
Oh,
either transferred or graduated, so a bit weird. But something I was reading about why we're potentially seeing some of these players like Olivia Miles decide to stay in college and use their extra year of eligibility is in part because of the WNBA CBA that's coming. I
mm,
think this was in an athletic post or article. I think so, where a lot of agents are starting to advise if you have an extra year of eligibility because right now NIL is at its like peak in terms of like the amount of money you can make, and especially from an actual school program because it sounds like it's once again all this stuff is in the courts in the U.S. and there's a good chance that NIL could change where a university can't have an NIL program. It'll just be private NIL again. So like, your local businesses, etc. So like TCU can't have an NIL arm that it throws money at players.
mhm.
So agents are kind of advising a lot of their players right now, like if you have an extra year of eligibility, that you have the ability to potentially make more right now anyways with NIL, like TCU with Olivia Miles. They're probably throwing a bunch of money at her. She can make a ton there. Plus, by the time she enters the WNBA, the CBA will have probably changed and rookie scale contracts could almost be triple what they are now. And
Yep.
so why lock yourself into that old rookie scale contract when if you can stay an extra year, make your NIL money, you're going to keep your sponsorships anyway. And then by the time you enter the W, you have a better potential to earn as a rookie because the contracts could be different. I do think with
Exactly.
Olivia Miles, it's a little bit risky though, because she was projected to be no lower than the third pick in this draft, and then changing teams completely in your senior year, and it's your last season. There's a lot of pressure on that when you already were a very high pick. Like, I don't really know what she has to benefit from by playing another year in college, aside from obviously just the financial aspect of it. Because I just don't think, as like in terms of perception, she has the ability. Like, maybe she can go number one overall the next year, but like, it's an improvement on 2 spots in the draft. It's not like she was going from like the 12th pick to the first pick or something. She's going from 3 to 1 maybe. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a change. Because I don't think the scale for rookie scale contracts changes it's the same for the top probably 5 picks. I know in the NBA the top like 14, because the lottery picks get paid different than a different first round pick, but like, so the difference between getting drafted like 10 versus 14 is probably just a matter of pride. Same with like 3 to 1, right? Like, I don't think there's a very big financial difference between going as the 3rd overall pick versus the 1st overall pick, other than it's just your pride of wanting to be the 1st overall pick. I think that's my read on the situation. But so it's a little risky for Olivia Miles, but she's talented, so I don't see it not working out. It's a bit risky because you're already like a very high projected pick.
I'm gonna pocket that last year of money and then hopefully get that new CBA and come in and
Yeah, that's
actually make some solid cash as a rookie as opposed to what it is now.
yeah. I think that
It's not a
must be
lot
the
of
biggest motivation, which is totally fine. I don't begrudge anyone for getting their bag. It's a bit of a puzzling move, and I feel like that might be the best explanation for the situation.
yeah.
Because she had the ability, if it was a matter of like teammate chemistry, she had the ability to just go into the WNBA draft. It's not like she had to go back. So, curious. I could see if she'd gone back to Notre Dame for an extra year, you can kind of make the case of like, oh, I just wanted to get that deeper playoff run with Notre Dame, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's also maybe an element of you only get to play in the NCAA tournament so many times in your life. It's not something you can ever go back and do. So maybe there's also that, where it's like she just wants to have that last really deep run in the playoffs that she never got with Notre Dame. I don't know. Only she knows truly what the reason was, but very interesting choice. And kind of did definitely mess with the draft a little bit, but because the mock draft I'm looking at still has Olivia Miles going second, but she's not even in the draft, so.
My team is allergic to first round picks, so it doesn't really affect the Phoenix Mercury a whole lot. So.
Fair enough, yep.
But yeah, we got a little something in the second round potentially. I'm excited to see. I feel like the mock drafts I've seen have had very different projections for the end of the first round. I've seen some
Hmm.
players go as high as 9 and some, and as low as like 18 to 20 and
Who
others. So it's gonna be some intrigue here.
who do you think goes as the second pick? Because Seattle's picking number 2, and obviously Olivia Miles was projected to go there potentially. I don't know, do you think Kiki Iriefin moves up a spot, or even like, I mean, Sanaya Citron's pretty high, but I don't think she's a number 2 pick by any means. Dominique
I think
Malonga's getting a
I've seen
lot of hype
Malonga
right
like
now.
everywhere. Yeah, I've seen her like in pretty
Yeah,
much every mock draft going second after Paige Backers.
because the mock I'm looking at right now must be old, obviously, because Olivia Miles is still in it, but they have
Yeah,
Malonga going 6th to the Valkyrie.
yeah.
This draft kind of feels like it could go a variety of directions after Paige. Like, I feel like the number 1 pick is pretty chalk, but then after that, I feel like there's a lot of talent and it could kind of go anyway. Like, this one has the Mystics taking Kiki at 3, which I think is probably pretty fair. I think Kiki would be more likely to go to the Mystics just because of positional need. The Storm don't really need a forward at this point right now. They have like NECA re-signed, excuse me, and I think Gabby Williams is going back too. So I could see them sticking more with the vets, but I guess they could always take someone like Kiki. But I feel like Kiki is ready to play. Like, I think they can't do what they did with Nika and just kind of stash her on the bench. I think you need Kiki to play. I also think
Well,
they need a replacement. They need a replacement for Jewel Lloyd.
They aren't gonna
Yeah.
overthink it too much because they're also picking fourth,
Yeah, exactly.
and,
I think
and
that
then and then they're also picking sixth,
they
which
have
is
a million
crazy.
picks. Yeah. Uh, this I guess, yeah. I need to find a newer mock draft because this one has Washington at 4 as well. But I think that
Mystics at 3, 4, and 6 is what I'm getting from one released on April 9th. So
yeah. So the Storm picks second, and then right now the draft order for the first round is Dallas at 1, Seattle at 2, Washington at 3, 4, Golden State at 5. I forgot they moved up. 6 for the Mystics again. Connecticut has 7, 8, and then Los Angeles at 9, Chicago at 10, Minnesota at 11, Dallas at 12. So they finished. They have first and last. So I just pulled up a different mock draft. This one's the Bleacher Report one. And their mock is Paige Bueckers at 1 to Dallas, Dominique Malonga to Seattle at 2, Sanaya Citron at 3 to the Mystics, Kiki at 4 to the Mystics, Anissa Morrow at 5 to Golden State, Cheyenne Sellers to Washington, which would actually be a great pick for them because, 1, she's a very dynamic guard, and 2, just the hometown crowd because she went to Maryland. 7 for Connecticut, taking Georgia Amore, and then they have at 8 a Lithuanian player for Connecticut, a point guard I've never heard of. And then at 9, Los Angeles taking Sanaya Rivers. 10, Chicago taking Haley Van Lith because Amore would be gone. Minnesota taking Sarah Ashley Barker from Alabama. She was kind of a surprise. I mean, she had an incredible run there. And then Dallas finishing off the first round by taking your girl Serena from K-State.
Hey.
I would actually fuck hard with Serena Sundell, Chicago Sky, to be honest.
We'd love to see her on a winning team.
And sure. I also don't even think 10 would be that rich of a pick for her. I mean, the difference between 10 and 12 is pretty minor, in my eyes at least. I would fuck with that. Yeah. Honestly, I could fuck with Haley Van Lith being on the Chicago Sky. I would love another Louisville guard. I don't really
draft with Sundell going to the Sparks at 9 or 10, and then another one with Tamara Poindexter going to the Sparks in like the 20s somewhere. And both of them hurt me a little bit. I was just like, man, having to root for 2 players, potentially having to root for 2 players on the Los Angeles Sparks would hurt my soul a little bit, but I can get through it.
I think that Dominique Malonga has done a lot to bring up her draft stock in the last couple of months, especially with Olivia Miles dipping out of the draft and some of the other players leaving. I feel as though, and then Dominique Malonga having that female Wemby branding is really helping. So it'll be interesting. I don't know whether she would come over this year, though, or stay in Europe for another year. Looks like there's a good chance she could come over, but no, she'd probably stay over for 1 more year. She's only 19, so I could see she'd be, I think she's the youngest person in the draft by like a pretty significant margin. So I feel like she's a player who would be a draft. I feel like she'd be a draft and stash, which would actually be okay for Seattle because they've got some veterans at the guard positions, or like the forward positions, sorry, so they could kind of keep her overseas for a bit. Do what they did with Ezzy.
According to ESPN, she intends to play in the WNBA this summer.
Okay.
Yeah. Could be fun.
I mean, she would still be beneficial to them as a rookie coming off the bench, like at the end of the day. I feel like she could be, her and Ezzy next to each other would be really interesting for the future.
Tall as hell.
Just long as hell. Everywhere. I hope that Dominique Malonga sets better screens because that is one issue with Ezzy. She's not a great screen setter. They don't ask her to be necessarily. That year where Seattle didn't have Sue anymore and Jewel Lloyd was kind of the main player on the roster was painful because they were like, here, Jewel, get a bucket. But like no one set screens. No one did anything. They just stood around and it was Jewel Lloyd ISOs for days, which was something. She's talented as hell, but that was a lot to watch. It was a little too much. I'm hella curious about whether or not, Haley Van Lith did enough to raise her draft stock to get her any higher than pick number 10. Like, I wouldn't be particularly surprised if she moved up significantly, like if I think Citron didn't play great her last game, but I think she had a very good career at Notre Dame. I think I'm a little surprised to see her at 3 for some reason. I don't know why that seems high for her, to me, at least. I'm not a good talent evaluator, though, so who am I?
Dropped out, so some people have had to slide up to compensate for it.
I just would have expected someone like Georgia Amore or even HVL or Cheyenne Sellers to move up a little bit more rather than Sanaya, but I mean, hey, again, what do I know?
Shit, I've seen some with Van Lith and Amore in the second round. Like, I've seen some of them both in the first. Like, there could be a lot of movement once you get past like the 5th, 6th pick. I feel like there's no real consensus about the players after that point.
I think this is a very deep draft where you have a clear number 1 pick and then a lot of players who are basically at the same level.
Yeah.
Like, I think you could make a pretty fair argument that Anissa Morrow, Kiki Iriefin, Cheyenne Sellers, Georgia Amore, Sanaya Rivers, HVL, Barker, Sundell, like Sanaya Citron, like all of these players are they're not the same in terms of play style or anything like that, but just like skill level, You know what I mean? Like they're all very skilled, very talented. You'd be happy with any of them, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. Just depends
Personally.
on what you feel like you need at that moment in time on your roster, like when it's your
I
turn. Like,
think it's going to come down to positional need more than anything else because, to be honest,
yeah,
if someone like I would be happy with, if I was the Mystics, like obviously I'd be happy with getting Kiki or Sanaya Citron, but if Anissa Moro was still there, or like if frickin', like say Kiki goes, say Seattle takes Kiki, I feel like you'd be happy taking Malonga, or you'd be even happy reaching maybe on a player like, I don't know, any of the guards, honestly. Cheyenne Sellers, you'd be happy. I mean, they could take her at 6. They have a million picks, so the Mystics are tough because they can just pick whatever. But I think you'd be happy taking a player, say, like HVL. You could take her probably as high as 5 and be happy, but if she falls to 10, you're, like, laughing all the way to the podium kind of situation,
yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of... all of these players have their flaws. That's just... No one's perfect when they enter the draft. Even Paige has, obviously, things she'll have to work on in the W. And I think that's something that people didn't want to admit about Caitlin Clark when she went first overall, was that, yeah, she's fucking amazing, but, like, going to the pros is a whole other adjustment. So
Yeah.
Paige is still going to have to adjust at the end of the day. I think she's a better, more well-rounded player than Caitlin to some extent, and she's also had to play with more professional talent, because at the end of the day, a lot of her former teammates also are in the W now, like Ono and like some of those players, so it's not like she... But I still think she's going to have a learning curve, because it's the WNBA, and it's really hard to be a point guard in the W. That's just the nature of it. Especially when you have a team in Dallas where she's going to be playing with like a guard like Enrique, and then also having very talented posts in Dijonay and Alyssa Smith, and just having to figure out that balance, right? So the good news is she's pretty good without the ball in her.
Yeah, good enough shooter to spot up.
Yeah, and also just she's willing to like let other people run the game too. Like she's still involved, but you even saw that in the national championship game. Like she had a good game, but she was pretty much just letting AZ and Sarah Strong cook. So she's fine. I feel like Paige is going to be a great first pick. But yeah, I think everybody else after her, it kind of could be anything. I think a player like Sarah Ashley Barker, like the tournament really raised her draft value, because I think before the tournament she was probably a second round pick. She's always been talented, but I mean just based on the amount of talent in the draft. But I think some of it is maybe a little recency bias because she had an incredible game. I'm honestly surprised to see Serena Sundell in the first round too, for that sort of just smaller school. Like you just don't know, and you don't get as much attention. But she's one of those players where, again, being at the end of the first round versus the beginning of the second round, it's not really like a significant difference in terms of you're still getting a very good player. I don't know. I think there's a lot of really good players in this draft. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll be at curling during the draft, so any of our social media content that comes up for the draft is going to be on you.
Yeah.
So, follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
You'll
see any video of me booing whoever the Sparks pick.
Fair. Who do you, I keep forgetting Kurt Miller's in Dallas now. I keep forgetting about that. But I saw a video of him cheering when it was a video of during the draft lottery when Dallas got the first pick, and he was like jumping up and down.
I would too.
Yeah. Any other quick thoughts on the WNBA draft or the tournament, I guess, quickly before we end this little segment and move on to the NBA?
It felt like the old UConn dynasty days, just beating the fucking brakes off everybody.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I expected a bit more of a competitive game than that. Like, I knew, we talked about this too leading into the game, how South Carolina's offense kind of looked like it was falling off the rails a little bit, and they were kind of hanging on, but I did not expect quite that level of a beatdown.
Yeah, honestly, their whole tournament, they just went absolutely bananas. I mean, they beat a 3 seed by 23 points. They beat a 1 seed by 14. They beat another 1 seed by 34, and then yet another 1 seed by 23. I mean, they ran through 3 1 seeds and none of them games were close. And the 3 seed beat the fucking brakes off everybody. It felt like the old UConn. It felt like they're back.
I think everybody underestimated what having a fully healthy UConn team in the tournament would actually look like, and how I also think there's probably a bit of underestimation of players like Sarah Strong, where she was obviously a very good freshman this year, and everyone saw that. But I think that when you get to the tournament, you kind of just, you tend to view a little bit of what happened the last couple of years. And UConn has obviously had some injuries and they've struggled. And I'm guilty of definitely underestimating them because I thought they were good. I just wasn't really sure what to expect either. Yeah. And they had a hard bracket, like you said. They beat top seeds. Like, they had to play a lot of really good teams to get to the final. So it's not like they had a cake schedule by any means. They were just legitimately really fucking good. And their defense was very good too. Like, they got a lot of steals. They turned the ball over on other teams a lot and just benefited from that. And then you've got, Sarah Strong looking like baby Jokic in the post, just diamond people. So it was pretty, it's pretty impressive, not gonna lie. I was shook that they absolutely blew the doors off of South Carolina like that, because even if South Carolina can't necessarily score the same way, I expected them to at least be like making UConn's life a lot harder on defense, and they were not able to do that.
Yeah, if you sometimes you get champions that say, oh, they had a weak bracket, or oh, they got lucky, won a hot shooting performance. When you open hand smack 3 straight #1 seeds, what can you say, man? Nobody else can even sit there and say, oh man, if I had done this, we could have won it. Oh man, if I had made this shot, we could have won it. No, you couldn't have.
None of those games were close. None of those games
UConn
were
was
close.
winning that shit. There was no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. They were by far the best team at the tournament, it turns out.
Yep.
And they will be next year, probably one of the best, because, I mean, South Carolina has a bunch of returning players, obviously, and they're only going to get better. And they just got Tania Latson from Florida, so they got one of the best scorers in the country. So now they have kind of an it girl to get them some buckets.
Florida State, I think.
So now, from Florida State, the Seminoles. Yeah, so. And the Seminoles had the best offense in the NCAA this year, and she was a big reason for that. So they got a bucket getter in South Carolina. And then they also got one of the top high school prospects, Agat McKeer, the South Sudanese girl. Mm-hmm. They committed to her, so they're going to have another very good team. South Carolina remains very good, and same, like, Rory Harmon's going back to Texas. Cody McMahon transferred to Ole Miss, so the SEC stays strong, but I think UConn also has a ton of returning players because AZ is coming back for another year, and Sarah Strong's only a freshman. And I think their center, the Egyptian, Yana LLFE, I think she's coming back. They've got lots of players, so I don't know. It's going to be, I think UConn's going to head into the year, obviously, as a favorite, and they deserve that. And next year's tournament's going to be it's going to be a banger again, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. The women's game will still remain chalk, unfortunately. I mean, even the men's tournament was very chalky, obviously. I had 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. But I think it's just going to
That one was surprising. This one is par for the course.
I think because on the men's side, you could see a number of the 1 seeds going down. You would neither be surprised if all of them ended up in the Final Four like they did, or if some of them had gone down. Like, it would have been kind of not surprising either way, whereas the women having a team like UConn go down super early would have been surprising. I think we had them in the Final Four in our bracket. I just don't know if we had them making it. We didn't have them making it to the championship game because I don't believe so. Obviously, the Juju injury kind of fucked our bracket a little bit.
Yeah, I think we had them. I think we had USC playing against South Carolina.
We did. We had USC versus USC essentially in the final.
Yeah.
UCLA lost.
We did correctly pick South Carolina going to the final. We
did. Yes.
Didn't know what was going to happen.
We didn't really correctly pick them getting their asses absolutely beat.
Yeah.
That was rough. I'm not gonna lie. But
what did the coach say? They whooped our asses and didn't make us like it. I was just like,
yeah, Dawn did not mince words. She was not happy, and bars. And that's the thing, is that Dawn's always going to respect her opponent, and she wasn't sleeping on UConn.
Yeah.
But and what's weird too is, like, I heard that I don't know what happened to the team, because, like, on defense even too, like, there was a number of just blown coverages. Like, they just left AZ wide open for threes, or Tage in some cases. Like, it was just weird. There was some uncharacteristic defensive breakdowns and things like that in South Carolina, which I think maybe is a symptom of having a lot of young players, because they do. And I think there was a bit of a struggle and disconnect with Malaysia Fulwiley, because she entered the transfer portal. So she's leaving South Carolina, which is pretty big. I mean, her and Dawn always had a pretty interesting challenge, where I think Dawn was the one who believed in her the most, but also at the same time was the hardest on her, because she saw the potential and was like, you you can be this amazing player, but you also are incredibly inconsistent, and you're going to
Mm.
ride the bench if you can't figure that out a little bit.
Yeah.
And which is fair because, she can change the game in 5 possessions, but at the same time, she can also change the game in 5 possessions in a negative way too. Just because she gets blown by on defense or turns the ball over or just takes some wild shots. She's very much like her confidence is both her kryptonite and the thing that makes her special. So we'll see where she goes. That'll be really interesting to see where she ends up. But interesting that
Wherever
she
she
is leaving.
goes, they about to get twice as fun to watch. Their highlight reels are
Yeah,
about to be a lot longer.
for sure. And she's from
She
South
got
Carolina
handled
too,
like very
so
few.
it's an interesting choice for her to leave. But we'll see what happens. Any other final NCAA thoughts before we slide on over to the MNBA, the MNBA?
Go Cats.
Okay,
I hope Poindexter and Sundale get drafted, and not the teams that I hate. That'd be wonderful.
that would be wonderful. I would very much like it if Serena Sundell went to like Minnesota. I think she'd be a great
Honestly,
Cheryl Reeve. She'd be a great Cheryl Reeve player.
honestly, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but it'd be sick if she did. Plus, I feel like Minnesota can always just use guard help. Anyway, so I guess finally we'll finish up on this note. The NBA playoffs are starting.
Yeah,
We're almost at W season, but not quite.
yeah. As we speak
And
right now, some of the final matchups are sort of being set. There's a lot of teams in the West who are tied or close to being tied. There's a lot of teams that can move from anywhere from 4 to like 7, right? And so a lot of those games are being played right now. So we don't have a super clear set of first round matchups, but we do know at the very least in each conference, all 10 of the teams who will be participating in the postseason. So we may not know all of who's going to play who in the first round. Obviously, the play-in uh, not only has to be set, but then has to happen, right?
yeah,
But yeah, we know all 20 teams that will be playing beyond today, the last day of the regular season, and
yeah,
I think we have a pretty good idea of who stands where as far as who's actually worth taking seriously as contenders.
yeah. So I think the plan for us, because we like you just said, like we don't really know exactly what the matchups are going to be, but we have an idea of who the teams are going to be probably. So Chris went ahead and tiered these bad boys out for us. So we decided to do them in tiers because to kind of talk about the contenders, the pretenders, and who's there, but probably shouldn't be. Just they're just there. Someone has to be in the 8th seed, so there they are. Um,
Somebody is
someone,
contractually obligated as the 10 seed to show
yeah,
up to the play-in.
someone is contractually obligated to be cannon fodder for the Thunder and Cavaliers. So, yeah, how do you want to go through these tiers? You want to talk about the teams that they're the contractually obligated to be there. The
Yeah, I
I'm
want to
just
go
here
bottom
so
up.
the I'm just here so I don't get fined to play teams, and then
Yeah,
go from there.
I have the bottom tier labeled get them off my TV. I want them out of the postseason as quickly as possible. I don't want to watch them play each other. I don't want to watch them play the
Anyone.
bigger teams. Please get them out of my face. That includes the Atlanta Hawks. I'm sorry. I know Trae Young makes some cool plays, but they're not serious. The Chicago Bulls, like, honestly, get them off my TV, maybe permanently. The Miami Heat. They had that weird long ass losing streak post Jimmy Butler before kind of like finding their feet again, but they're not going anywhere. I'm sorry, but your best two players are Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. It's not enough. They're nice players, but it's not enough.
Asia's boyfriend is
Uh,
great, but he's not Asia.
yeah, yeah. The Kings, who are just a retread of the old Chicago Bulls team, basically, they're also not going anywhere. Hate to say it. And the Dallas Mavericks, in their post Luca fan depression era, Anthony Davis is back. That's great. Unfortunately,
Is it?
Kyrie Irving's ACL is asunder, and they are not going anywhere.
So I think the fascinating thing about some of these teams is it's like a team like the Miami Heat, where like I feel like they're here because they built up a huge cushion when they had Jimmy Butler.
Yeah,
And then the other teams in the East are literally just so bad that by default they're kind of just there.
yeah,
Like they had no choice but to be in the play-in because the bottom of the East is just so bad. Like it's funny
yeah,
watching the West playoff race for like seeding because it's so tight. Like even the play-in teams are so tight to not being in the play-in versus the West, or sorry, the East, where it's just like we've known for probably like 2 months who was going to be where in the
Yeah,
standings.
it easily could have been like the Toronto Raptors or something in like ninth or tenth, but they were trying very, very hard to not accidentally wind up in the play-in.
Which was
They wanted
smart.
to avoid that shit at all costs.
Personally, as a fan, it's a bit of a joke, but I would prefer it that way just because we traded for Brandon Ingram. Like, I don't think the team has intentions of really being this bad again. And so rather than making the play in and completely fucking over your draft prospects, you may as well. And we also have our first round pick this year where we haven't in a couple of years. So it's kind of like we may as well take advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
And so I don't hate it fully. I'd rather a team like the Heat or even the Bulls. The Bulls are like, which are the Bulls the 10th seed again?
Let me look, let me look. The Bulls are ninth. Miami is in 10th at just
Okay.
37 and
Yeah.
45.
So either way, like the Chicago Bulls always end up in the play-in, and same with the Hawks. Like both of them have, I think they've played in like every play-in game that's existed essentially. And the Hawks, like, were always destined to be here because they are contractually obligated to always sit around 500. They can't be too high or low off that number. They have to be a 500 team. Otherwise, they can't be the Atlanta Hawks. It's like just like you can't be Champagne if you're not from the Champagne
Yep.
region of France. If
Yep.
you're not a 500 team from Atlanta, you can't be the Atlanta Hawks. That's
Hey, if you're
just
wondering about their form going into the playoffs, they have won 5 of their last 10.
exactly 500.
Yep.
We love a consistent king.
And they were one win away from being exactly a 500 team too, which is it's a damn shame they couldn't get that last one.
Oh Hawks. Oh Atlanta. Caca. The the Bulls and the Heat are just, I don't know. I mean, the Bulls are there because Josh Giddey all of a sudden got real fucking good for like 2 months.
Yeah.
But it's what's annoying actually about the Bulls is I really think like if they can finally get rid of Vooch, the youth movement's kind of fun there. Like Buzelis has been a really fun rookie. Kobe White is officially like a good player. He's very fun
Yeah.
to watch. They've actually got some people on. Io DeSim has been pretty good. Like they've got some good players. Like it's just I don't know what's going on. I mean I think Giddey is fine. I just personally would rather not see him on my TV. That's just a aesthetic preference. I don't know. You can't tell me there was nothing going on there. As far as I don't know, the bottom of the East play-in is just, ugh, don't care. Can't say I give a shit because at the end of the day, whoever plays the Cavaliers, the Celtics is gonna die, so it doesn't matter. It's gonna be a short-lived thing anyway. The Mavericks are an interesting case. Like I feel like they're possibly the most depressing team in the play-in because why is Anthony Davis on the court? I honestly don't understand. Because he's clearly like not even himself because he's still injured. But he's rushing himself back to play for nothing. And I don't understand the utility of this at all.
Yeah,
It would have
no
been
disrespect
better.
to Najee Marshall, who absolutely nuked the Knicks in the first half when they played a little while ago. But dog, that can't be your number one perimeter scorer, man. Like that's
No. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie should not be the only man who can dribble a basketball on your team. That's probably not a great place to be.
it's tough. It's
I
tough.
feel bad. I feel bad for Klay Thompson. Poor Klay. Went there to play with Luca and
He's had
Kyrie, and
he's had an okay career.
it's
He'll
been
be
rough.
okay.
He'll be fine, but it's a little rough. It's just interesting that the the Mavericks are even somehow in the play-in only because of the sheer ineptitude of the Phoenix Suns. Like it's very funny that two of the possibly most inept teams in the league, one of one who made the most puzzling fucking trade ever, straight up ever, yeah. Their team made it, and they really they're built to win now. But after all those injuries, nobody could have blamed the Mavericks for just being like, fuck it, shut it down. We'll return to this next year and try again. Like I think there was a little bit of like, you know what, you still made the dumbest possible move in trading Luca, but like everybody also then got injured, so kind of whatever. But I mean, the Suns absolutely whiffing on even getting into the play-in because they literally just can't do anything good is wild. When you have, and it's one thing to say that when you have maybe if there's the Suns of just just Devin Booker and maybe some aging players or whatever, but now it's you have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and in theory Bradley Beal, but that means that name means something different than it used to. But regardless,
Yeah. I don't
you
wanna- I don't
have
wanna
you
put
have
too
a
much-
Hall of Famer on your roster and you can't
Yeah.
even make the play-in, brother.
I
What?
don't want to
On
spend too
top of
much time on the
being
Suns, but I will
no.
add one thing. There was a graphic that went around, and it was, is your team in the playoffs, the play-in, or the draft lottery? And 29 teams were in the yes column, and the Phoenix Suns were all alone in the no column. It was
Yeah.
fucking depressing. I said it to my dad, and he was not pleased.
They, as much as Dallas really pushed them for the Eagleton "You Blew It Super Hard Complete Buffoonery" award. The Mavericks really pushed them on that, but at the end of the day, they are still the sole winners
Yeah,
of that award. Back to back years, even, because really, last year was also kind of a disaster, too.
sure
Um,
was.
but they at least managed to salvage it with getting into the playoffs and, like, being competitive against Minnesota for a minute. They
Yeah,
didn't really win anything, but at least you're like, okay, like, this looks like a team that Minnesota has to be careful. Uh, that is not the case anymore. It's
it's not.
crazy, literally, how like less than 5 years ago they were in the finals.
Yeah, and it was with a team where four of the five starters were like 26 and under, and the only old guy was Chris Paul. So you think up and up, and no, they've gotten worse. They've gotten a little worse every year since then,
Yeah,
until the bottom
and
completely fell out this season.
they're gonna fire Bud again. They're gonna fire their coach again, which fine. But like, I do not feel that Budenholzer was the problem at all.
No, he was
Not even
definitely not a
remotely.
solution though, as we found
No,
out.
no.
No,
But
not even.
I also don't know that any coach could be, like, at least not one of the, like, a Budenholzer type coach. Like, I think you need to go for a Will Hardy, like that kind of like unproven coach who's coached in a G League situation, kind of like a Nick Nurse, like a Will Hardy, like those kinds of guys. Not Nick Nurse now, but like when he was first becoming a head coach. I think honestly that team needs a younger coach to figure out what to do with the like misfit parts of the team, because I just think a coach like Bud, like that's the kind of coach who's a force multiplier when your roster is already pretty good. You saw what happened with the Bucks, right? You went from having a Jason Kidd coach team with like a pretty solid roster but nothing amazing to having Bud come to the team, not a lot changes on the roster, and all of a sudden they're like a 50-60 win team. And so those types of coaches are the force multipliers of good rosters. They're not necessarily your tear it down and build it back up coaches. And as much as the Phoenix Suns have talent, they have very good top end talent in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. They're mostly a island of misfit toy type team that needs one of those coaches. Like, again, I think Will Hardy in Utah is probably one of the best examples of just who can like piece together a roster and make it work. Because as much as they don't win a ton of games, it's not like his players aren't playing harder. Like, it's just the roster he's being given, right? So he's still coaching, he can still coach up a good team. And when he has any semblance of talent going on in Utah, they win games. So you need a coach like that in Phoenix. I don't think you need one of these like veteran kind of put you over the top type coaches, because that team is not in that kind of place. They are not in a we're one really good coach away from winning a championship kind of style. They are, we might need to trade our franchise scorer who doesn't want to leave because he is the only way back to actually having a good team. Doing that is the only way we can recover. And that's fucking depressing.
Their owner is the same Matt Ishbia that wants Isaiah Thomas around the organization. This man is going to call fucking Phil Jackson or some shit to coach the team. But anyway,
Yeah.
moving on to the
Yes.
next tier of.
Which I guess also
I've got.
we'll post these tiers on Instagram and on our
Yep.
socials for people to see. But anyways, continue. Yeah.
We got the just happy to be here tier. The Detroit Pistons, man, they've been out in the fucking woods for 9 years. They're playing good basketball. They got a young star, the number one overall pick, Kate Cunningham, has turned into a legit baller. They got a nice supporting cast around them, like a mix of veterans and young guys. They play hard defense. They play Detroit basketball. It's been fun to watch. And I've also got the Orlando Magic up there, who shouldn't be in this tier, but because they had so many injury issues earlier in the season. Like, this seemed like it was going to be their breakout. We can push for
Yeah.
like a conference championship appearance type of season, but those injuries hit them really hard. The two best players both missed significant time. They finished exactly 500, and I'm gonna say, you know what? For them to stay afloat just enough through ridiculous amounts of injuries, to still make the playoffs, well, they're the seventh seed, they'll be in the play-in,
Okay, yeah.
but to still be up there, I think they can still be in the just happy to be here tier, and they're still young enough that if they don't, make a push this season, it's fine.
Yeah, I think that I was just about to say they're the team that probably doesn't want to be in this tier,
Yep.
because the last 2 seasons you could say that was maybe for sure them. They were like, this young up and coming team. We're finally back in the playoffs. Like, we're showing some sense of a direction. This year was definitely supposed to be different. But I also think that, to your point, the injuries were obviously a huge thing. Like losing Paolo and Franz both for like months at a time was not great. But the other issue is like they're still an offensive player, and then they had to shut down Jalen Suggs too. They're still a really good guard away from
Hmm.
being from being in that next tier. Like I think that
Yeah.
if they had managed to stay healthy, they might have slipped into that pretender tier and probably would have their next tier, and probably that's like where they should be right even right now. But it is a miracle they're even in the seventh seed, and like yes, they're in the play-in, but they're at least in the driver's seat of the play-in that sense, right? Like it's
Yeah.
easier to claim a playoff spot as the seventh seed. You only have to win one game, so and you get to play at home. So I think that they'll be fine in that sense. They're gonna make the playoffs probably as the seventh seed, but their offense absolutely. Honestly, they give like South Carolina vibes in terms of just being a vicious defense and an absolute cratering offense at times.
Yeah.
Like if they just I think they hit the fewest threes of any team in the league. Sometimes it's honestly absolutely friggin' brutal to watch them play on offense, and it's not because they don't have some talented players. They just like having your two wings be your best scorers is not always the best recipe for success. I think they really do need a better like guard situation. Jalen Suggs is very talented, but he's not the offense first guard you need. He,
Yeah.
yeah,
Moving up into we have the pretenders tier, teams that are solidly playoff teams, no play-in necessary, teams that really earned a spot the old-fashioned way, but who I just don't think have enough to really push for a championship. But the Houston Rockets, who I just don't think score enough despite their great defense. The Memphis Grizzlies, who have been kind of on a weird nosedive since their coach firing, which was a little awkward already. The Knicks, it pains me to put them there, but their record against the top three teams in the league is fucking atrocious.
Oh, and eight.
Atrocious in the sense that there are zero wins.
Yeah,
It's not great. So, and they've been trending downward a little bit since the Brunson injury, even though he's back now. I don't think he's not fully
there
big
yet.
body Brunson yet. So it's a little tough, but at least Mitch is back on the court. The Wolves, it just doesn't seem like everything is meshed right. They've been good enough for most of the year, but like Devo hasn't really been what he was last year in New York. Randall and Gobert still kind of awkward. The
Yeah,
Clippers have been playing really well, but I don't think they're in that upper tier. I just don't think they're quite good enough, but I think they'll give somebody some problems, especially now that Kawhi is back and playing. The Pacers, I just refuse to take them seriously. I'm sorry. And then the Milwaukee Bucks, they horrible start to the season, stabilized, but now Lillard probably out. I have to assume out for the playoffs because of the
yeah,
blood clots. So, Giannis has
yeah.
been going fucking supernova lately, but like talking about like 30 points, 11 boards, 15 assists, like every other game. But it's only so much he can do. The rest of that team is just not that good. I think they're first or second round out, depending on who they play. I get when they're
I,
playing Indiana.
I think as long as you have
Yeah,
Giannis, you've always got a shot to do
yeah,
something at least. But I agree they're probably lacking on the top end talent to really push them over the edge because it's like outside of Giannis and Dame, like they've got some nice players, but they're definitely a little thin. They have to rely on players like Kevin Porter Jr., and that's not really a
mhm,
place you want to be in.
no,
Also, someone who probably shouldn't be in the league, but that's another discussion. Uh, he's in that he's in the Miles Bridges tier of players who I don't really want to see play basketball ever. I think the Clippers, you're probably right too. The Clippers are kind of similar to the Bucks for me, where I think, well, except for the difference where the Clippers have the best playoff coach in the league. uh, they've got, and I mean, they have I didn't actually really realize this, but Jeff Van Gundy has been leading their defense all year. He's the lead assistant after Ty Lue. So they've got like a great coaching staff. Shout out Jeff Van Gundy. He's been having a great year. I'm happy to see him back coaching actually because he's a very good
still
coach.
got it,
Yeah,
still
still
got it.
got it. I think the Clippers will go as far as Kawhi and James Harden take them ultimately. I think that Harden is not the most notoriously clutch player in the playoffs, so that'll be interesting to see. Kawhi is obviously never very healthy, so hopefully he stays healthy for this playoff run. I think they have the ability to maybe like make some noise if they can stay healthy, but you have to rely on a lot going right for them to truly like
Hmm.
get past maybe the second round. The Knicks, yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I feel like they they're similar to the Clippers, where I think they have the potential to make a ton of noise. Like, they're a very good team, but I think that the ceiling for the Knicks is probably like conference finals.
If
Because
that,
if
because
that, like, depends who you get in the first and second round. It really just depends on the bracket. But as
they
soon
got to
as you
beat
run in,
Detroit, and then I guess they would have to beat I think Cleveland in the second round. Either them or Boston. I
yeah,
don't think they're beating either Cleveland or Boston. So I think the second round
no,
is
probably
where
the
this
the
journey
ceiling.
ends for the first iteration of
Yeah,
cat uh the cat Knicks.
the West is really where it just gets so weird because I could see Minnesota getting all the way to the conference finals again, or I could see them flaming out in the first round. Like, I maybe I don't see them getting to the conference finals, but I could see them having like a very competitive second round, or again just being absolute dog shit and flaming out in the first round because they just have so much inconsistency. Like, they have to rely a lot on Anthony Edwards' hero ball, and that can take you a lot of places, but can also not get you there. Gobert has been having a weirdly good stretch here. It's weird seeing him put up numbers. Still ugly as hell to watch, but hey, I watched for some reason I watched the highlight reel of his 35-point game, and not the sexiest 35 points I've ever seen scoring, but hey, it's 35 points.
Bear highlights, man. It's been a tough winter in Alberta.
Yeah, rough. Uh, I watched like 30. I didn't even watch the whole clip. I'm not gonna lie, but it was pretty tough. The Rockets are fun. I think the Rockets could easily be in that just happy to be here category too, though, because this is like the first year that they've been very good, and it's mostly predicated on that defense. So I think the Rockets for me are on the bubble here. If they could be in that tier below with the Pistons and the Magic, because if anything, they actually remind me of the Pistons the most, where it's like they went from being just, I mean, they were like decent last year, but they weren't good. This year they're like a good team, but I think they have a lot to prove. So I feel like Pretenders is even a little bit rich for them. It's just they remind me a little bit too of that like Kings team that went from like being asked all of a sudden like a second seed, and you're kind of like, okay, I feel like we'll see. Could go very well in the playoffs. They're a very good team. They're built for the playoffs in the sense of defense. It's just offense. It's going to be really interesting. The Grizzlies, I think, are firmly in this category, but they're also a team that's just, I don't know. John Morant is not a likable person right now to me. So as much as I want to cheer for them, I mean, I think a Grizzlies Timberwolves series at some point would be pretty fun if that ever happened. I don't think it'll happen based on how the bracket will break, but could be interesting. But I don't know. The Grizzlies are, it's going to be up to John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., and we'll see what happens from there, because Desmond Bane's been pretty meh this season. Santi Aldama's having an okay season. Zach Edey's been honestly better than I think I anticipated him to be in the NBA. But, I don't know. There's nothing particularly, like, exciting to me about the Grizzlies right now, I think, because, I guess, and some of it to me, to be honest, is just the joy of watching John Morant has kind of died, and that's unfortunate because he's an exceptionally fun player to root for when he's playing well. But his whole turn to being, his little villain heel turn has been uncomfortable, to say the least.
The top 6 teams I've got in the dark horses tier. I have the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors. Surprisingly, did not expect to have them midway through the season. I would not have seen this coming. And the Denver Nuggets, who I'm kind of a legacy pick. I don't know how much I believe in them, to be completely honest, but
To me,
they're up there.
yeah, the Warriors feel like a legacy pick too. Actually, this whole tier feels legacy pickish, to be honest, because
They've been
I
cooking
can.
since Jim Butt came over, though. Like, they've been cooking.
They have, but I think they still have to rely way too heavily on Steph Curry.
We'll see if playoff Jimmy still exists. If he does, I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the conference finals, just because, they got veterans who have done it. Jimmy's been in 2 finals. Steph's obviously won 4 championships. But and some of the teams in the mid level of the Western standings don't really impress me that much. I could see them beating a Denver. I could see them beating even like a Houston or a Memphis, or I think there's some matchups that are a little better for them than others. I think the Clippers would
Mm-hmm.
be harder for them actually than some of the other teams,
I would
because
agree.
you can put Kawhi on Jimmy, which is a pretty nice luxury to have.
I
But
actually don't think that. I don't know that the Warriors beat the Nuggets, to be honest, because the Warriors still don't have the size,
yeah, they're still a smaller
and
team.
they, even with Jimmy Butler, like, I don't know. I'm
having a hard time
Denver's
trusting the
always
legacy
guarded
shit.
Jimmy. Denver's always guarded Jimmy well. Steph is the main problem for Denver, but I feel like having, I don't know, Steph versus Jokic is always a fun. It's always a fun series. I think those two teams are pretty similar, but I also think that I trust I trust the Nuggets a little more only because at the end of the day, I sort of like trust the rest of the Nuggets cast like a little bit more. Maybe not
Mm.
the second best player. Like I think Jimmy and Steph is like the best one too. But I don't know. I feel like I really like the way Aaron Gordon's been playing. I really like if Jamal is healthy. This is a big problem though. Depends on if Jamal Murray's healthy. If he is very healthy, then I trust him to be okay. I don't know. The Nuggets and Warriors are pretty similar. The Warriors have just been weird because the Jimmy Butler experience hasn't. It's been very good in lots of ways, but I also just don't know how much I trust off-season, like mid-season trades when it comes to the playoffs. It gets kind of weird there. Even the Lakers, like, I don't like how much the Lakers have to rely on LeBron James still, even though they have Luka. And Luka's
Yeah.
peaking right now, which has been really fun, I guess. I hate seeing him as a Laker. It's still gross. The yellow still looks atrocious.
Yeah, it
But,
looks weird on Austin Reeves too. Like it doesn't
yeah,
look good on
no.
Luca or Reeves, to be honest.
It's
But
just that
they are both hooping.
it's that pasty skin tone that I share with them. It looks awful. Yellow is a terrible
Yeah,
color.
they got to go back to
Uh,
gold. They got to go back to the gold hue instead of the yellow. That was a little more
Even then,
friendly.
just wear the
Yeah.
purple jersey. It's just better. But just wear the purple. I don't know. The Lakers, there's something about the Lakers, even though they have all of this talent, that I cannot trust. I don't know what it is. I think it's like they're a team where I could see them getting to the finals because they got really hot and they managed to stay kind of healthy. But there's just something about like even all of the top West contenders, essentially, because that's who these three are. Like if you look at like the tiers you made, like the top. So we'll just spill into the contenders tier you have is the Cavaliers, the Thunder, and the Celtics. And then I would definitely say that like yeah, the Lakers, Warriors, Nuggets are the top of the West, but at the same time like they don't feel on the same level at all, other
Yeah.
than the Thunder. The Thunder are very clearly in a tier of their own in the West, and there's everyone else because all of the Lakers, Warriors, and Nuggets feel like they could have the best player on the court because they probably will, but at the same time like it's everything after that that's very questionable. And the fact that like the Lakers, they could have two of the best players on the court in LeBron and Luka, but they sort of their losing streak when LeBron was injured definitely concerned me a little bit. And I don't know if it just depends on how their role players play at the end of the day. Same with the Warriors and Nuggets, obviously. I don't know. The Nuggets are a weird one because of the recent coaching change. Same thing as the Grizzlies. It's leaving some very strange vibes. So, I don't know. The West playoff race is very, like, confusing emotionally.
Yeah.
It's very hard to
Yeah.
feel a certain way about anything other than unsure.
So that leaves us with the top three, as you mentioned, the Cavs, the Thunder, and the Celtics. I even within that tier, I know the Cavs were the best team in the league for much of the season. I just still feel like the Celtics, having done it last year, I still trust them more than I trust Cleveland. And that's what the Celtics team that won it despite a few brain farts in the postseason. They were just that much more talented than everybody else. I still
Mm-hmm.
trust them more than I trust Cleveland. Even though Cleveland's been having a wonderful season. They had a little dip somewhat recently that was maybe a little concerning. Not super, super concerning, but a little bit. Um,
I think they
I
rested
just,
some
I just,
players a little bit through the stretch here.
yeah.
I'm with you in the sense that I think the Cavaliers and the Celtics are closer in terms of talent because like Jaylen Brown's been having a terrible season. Jaylen Brown is injured right now. He's still playing, and if you look at like the box score, he's playing 21 minutes a game, which means he's playing just enough to hit the threshold to still make like all NBA things like that. Um,
Mhm.
Kurt Goldsberry was on the new Zach Lowe show, the other day,
Hey.
and they talked about this about how the thresholds for awards like all NBA and stuff, like the 65 games and then the minimum of 20 minutes, is a bit hard because like a player like Ty Jerome should be in the sixth man of the year conversation, but he only plays 18 minutes a game, so he's technically two off. And then you have a player like Jaylen Brown who has objectively been kind of shitty this year, and especially lately, he's been injured. And he's clearly injured. He's even said he's been talking about having a knee issue. But he's playing 21 minutes a night, and it's like you can tell he's doing that just to keep his eligibility for things like All NBA. But it's crap. It's like what happened with Tyrese Halliburton last year, where he was playing with that hamstring, and you're like, if there was no threshold, you wouldn't be playing right now. Like you can tell, and so that's concerning for the Celtics because they need Jaylen Brown to be there otherwise. But I mean, they have enough other talent, obviously. But I think that Jaylen Brown is very integral to what they do, so we'll see. But I would agree that with the Cavaliers, to me, it just feels like I needed to see it because the last couple playoff runs have been not inspiring. And I understand that they have different coaching and stuff like that now, too. And I think the Kenny Atkinson thing makes a big difference because he has unlocked the the Mitchell Garland backcourt. He's unlocked the Jarrett Allen Mobley combination. Like, it's been very good in Cleveland and very fun to watch. And that DeAndre Hunter acquisition has been chef's kiss.
Exactly
It's
what they
been
needed. Yep.
fabulous. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious. I think I'm with you where I need to see it. I need to see them in action, and I need to see them convincingly win the first and second rounds, like, before I'm willing to, even the first round. Like, they can't just get by. They need to, like, convincingly win that series for me to have any kind of faith in them going forward. They've had a good record against good teams, but I still just feel like I don't try. And even, honestly, Donovan Mitchell, to me, isn't fully proven in the playoffs. Like, I feel like he was very good for the Jazz and won them some games, but I also feel like he lost them some games, so I'm curious to see how him in this ecosystem does. Because he's had to sacrifice a lot in this ecosystem. All of his counting stats are down, but he's been playing the best basketball when you watch it. So I'm very curious to see whether the Cavaliers eventually almost even revert to some of that old style of basketball, like when you have stars like Donovan Mitchell and stuff who can just get you a bucket, versus sticking in their offense, because the playoffs changes everything, right? If you play the right defense, it kind of bogs you down. So we'll see.
And even the Thunder, they haven't been to the conference finals together as a group, so there's still an
No.
element of you got to show me there. So I still, even though Jaylen Brown hasn't really been, you know, last postseason's Jaylen Brown, I still feel like I trust Boston more than I trust the other two big contenders. Like, it wouldn't shock me, even though the Thunder have been so fantastic this regular season, wouldn't necessarily blow my mind if they got knocked out in like the second or third round. But I still think they've been good enough this season. I gotta kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. So
I think
I gotta, yeah.
yeah, I think they're better than they were last year.
Hmm.
I think you can see it. I mean, Shea has been better. Shea's also getting the softest whistle on the face of the earth. And I love Shea to death, don't get me wrong. Team Canada's finest. I love him, and I will love him forever. But the whistle he is getting is a little bit obscene. So we'll see if that continues in the playoffs, because I think that has the ability to really hurt the Thunder. Like, I think Shea is still going to get whatever he wants, but if he's not getting the foul calls, it's going to be really interesting. If they don't get whistled the same way, because I do think that they're a physical team, because they can come at you in waves, but I also think they're vulnerable to some physicality. I think Thunder Rockets would be a very fun series to watch, because the Rockets are just going to beat the shit up. They're just going to beat the hell out of the Thunder. Yeah. And I think
Might be some Canadian on Canadian crime in that series, man. It might be Dylan Brooks just absolutely elbowing the shit out of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
honestly, I suspect that Dylan Brooks will be out there exclusively just to foul Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, Ime Udoka is going to be like, just go foul the shit out of him. Take your 6 fouls. Don't really care what you do the rest of the game. Just make it hard for him. If you get your 6 fouls in the first half, well, like, we can throw somebody else at him. We'll throw a Thompson at him. Doesn't matter. But, like, it's going to be interesting to see. But I'm with you. The Thunder definitely, there's a level of prove it there for sure. But I do think they're a better team than they were last year. Like, I think you've seen improvement from, unfortunately, their Slender Man has been playing very well. And he's, another year into his career, so he's got some experience. Cason Wallace is another year into things. J-Dub and the other big man, Jalen Williams, have made some strides. Hartenstein's been good for them. Dort has taken more steps. So, I don't know. I think they're a better team, which is crazy to say, but again, they still have to prove it. I don't know. I would honestly love to see a Cavaliers-Thunder final. I would rather see the Cavs in the final than the Celtics, personally.
Stern would turn over in his grave.
Yeah, right?
Versus Oklahoma City.
I can hear Lakers fans complaining already.
Yeah.
Because they think that they're the only team that
they're
drives.
Ordained. They're supposed to be in there, yeah.
Yeah, they're the only team that matters. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, my least favorite thing about Michael Malone getting fired has been all the Lakers fans being like, oh, Jokic is coming to the Lakers next. And you're like, oh, fuck.
What would they give up in exchange that the Nuggets would want?
I think they feel like because they fleeced the Mavericks and got Luka, they just have this irrational confidence that they can do anything. Yeah. Which is annoyingly been proven right in many situations. But I don't think Denver will trade Jokic unless Jokic forces his way out, and I don't think that's happening. So.
No, and it wouldn't be the Lakers. I don't know how it would happen.
Yeah.
Austin Reeves ain't that enticing for the Denver Nuggets organization.
He's a good player, but he's not that fucking good. Yeah, I don't know. They don't think it's gonna happen. I don't know, but I've been made a fool before. Didn't expect Luka to get traded, and here we are. So I don't know, but I think your tiers. The only sort of like qualm I would have is like the Rockets and Pistons. I think to me are very spiritually similar teams. I just think that the Rockets have a better record, and that's the only difference. But I actually don't know that that's But I think that's also part of the vulnerability, or like the volatility, sorry, of the West, is how they're in second. I don't necessarily know that they're like a true top seed like that.
Right.
I think they're closer to being the Pistons than not. It's just because the West is so fucked up that they managed to get there.
It's been a goofy season out West.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see. So you said the plan starts what, tomorrow, Monday?
I'd imagine not a day after the end of the regular season.
Or Tuesday, maybe?
Probably Tuesday.
Starts this. It's early this week, I think.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this will release Tuesday. I guess by the time we record next time, we'll be into the first round or just starting the first round. So
yeah,
we'll
and the episode will drop right before the play-in games get ready to start. So
yeah,
perfect time.
We'll be back. Yeah, we'll be back. Not next week, but the week after. So we'll talk about the playoffs more then. We'll probably recap the WNBA draft a little bit. And get ready for W season. We'll have a better idea of what some of these teams are going to look like. So the like training camps are starting pretty soon, I think.
Yep.
We're already starting to see some players coming back from Europe.
If you're listening to the pod the day it comes out, enjoy some Atlanta Hawks basketball.
Definitely get yourself
your annual tradition. It's like how on Thanksgiving the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions always play.
Always, yeah.
You know, play-in season. Hey, get ready for the Atlanta Hawks, baby.
And the Bulls, the Hawks and Bulls. That's the time. That's their time to shine.
Yep.
You're gonna definitely need some of this Campo Viejo, Rioja to get through those games. You're gonna need that. Get you some Tempranillo to survive the play-in tournament. Any final thoughts here before we get you off to your dinner date?
If the Knicks lose in the first round to Detroit, I may go into hiding for a couple years, but other than that, we're all good. Also, I don't know if I announced this last episode or not. My visa to stay in Canada has been extended. I am not gonna have to like get kicked out of the country or anything. So
yeah, we talked about your visa being it wasn't fixed yet at the time because we were talking about. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that half the podcast won't be illegal. We're not gonna have to hide you from the Canadian Immigration Services. That's advantages. We're good. We're in the clear now, so that's good. Yeah, I don't know. We'll probably come back with some more themed episodes here soon. And just as always, I guess keep following us on social media. We have some more fun stuff coming. We've started doing a video version of Wine Wednesday now, so you actually get to hear my stupid voice talk about wine more than you already do. Well, on that note, check out the social media. Keep following us, and we'll be back.
Yep. Till next time. Later.